Hi, I'm Keith Ford, and welcome to Inside Minneapolis.
And welcome to a special edition of Inside Minneapolis. I'm your host, Phill Lindsay, and we're at the Prospect Park Tower overlooking the downtown skyline of Minneapolis. And on this special edition, a sampler, if you will, we're going to take a look at some of the highlights over the last 18 months of producing the show. And although I'm your regular host, each time we go out on location, we have somebody talk a little bit about where we're taping that particular show. Let's go and hear from each and every one of them right now.
My name is Steve Lenhart. I'm the lock master at Upper St. Anthony Falls Lock.
My name is Amy Ryan. I'm Chief of Community Libraries for the Minneapolis Public Library.
My name is Kelly Hartman. We are at the Grain Belt Brew House right now.
Welcome to the 5th Precinct. I'm Inspector Christine Morris. I'm the precinct commander at this precinct.
I'm John Pastuk. My company is Natural Homes by John Pastuk.
Hi, I'm Deputy Chief Jim Clack of the Minneapolis Fire Department.
Thanks, Phil. I'm Melissa Marcotte. I'm the marketing manager of Calhoun Square.
Hi, I'm Carlo Cuesta. I'm the executive director of the Playwrights Center.
My name is Ann Christensen. I'm the branch manager of Washburn Library.
I'm Carrie Hill, and I was project designer on the IDS Crystal Court.
Hi, my name is Denise. We're here on the corner of Franklin and Nicollet in South Minneapolis at Acadia Cafe and Cabaret Theater.
Hi, I'm Chris Eilers. I'm one of the owners of Dunn Brothers Coffee.
Hi, I'm John Kramer with the California Building. We restored the building here at 4th and Hennepin, the gateway of Northeast and Old St. Anthony.
I'm Barbara Shin, the director principal for the Interdistrict Downtown School, a West Metro Education Program school.
My name is Mary Merrill Anderson, and I'm the 9th superintendent of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
My name is Leah Rowley, and I'm the marketing manager here at International Market Square.
Hi, my name is Julie Langer, and I work for Welsh Companies. We manage 3 properties here in the Whitney Mill Quarter area.
I'm Kevin Lewis. I'm Vice President of Convention Center Sales at the Minneapolis Convention Center.
For our first look back, we're going to go to May 1999 with the guest Genny Zak Kieley, author of Heart and Hard Work, a book in which she took a look at some of the people and the history of Northeast Minneapolis. We are at the Grain Belt Brewery in Northeast. It was a nice interview. Now, with me is a woman that actually I'm kind of envious of, because she's done something that I would have liked to have done, and that's write a wonderful book about a particular part of Minneapolis. Genny Zak Kieley has written a book called Heart and Hard Work. Genny, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you surprised by the success of this book?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've been telling me some stories about how people lined up out the door at Kramarczuk's for your first book signing. When you wrote it, did you have any anticipation that people would be so excited?
No. I thought, that I'd have to be going door to door.
Yeah, selling the books.
And obviously my family would buy it.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe 100, 200,
Yeah, but on that first book signing, you had hundreds of people show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now
it was it had only been out for about a week or so.
That's incredible. Now, how have people heard about it?
Well, there was a big article in the Star Tribune.
And that helps.
Yeah. And then there was an interview done on Channel 2. And it was right before Christmas, so I couldn't figure out really how they were going to work it into Christmas.
Yeah.
But they kind of used it as a kind of memory type of thing. People tend to be thinking about memories right around Christmas.
And everybody says, hey, this would make a great Christmas gift,
yes.
a holiday thing to give to aunt and uncle. Well, I think you said, too, when people were waiting in line to grab that book, your husband or somebody was drafted to go through the line and kind of keep some order, and people started looking at the book saying, I don't want just one of these, I want about 8 copies of this.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And you've had contact from around the country and...
I've gotten a lot of letters from... I was counting states for a while, and I think we came up with something like 15 in the very beginning, and I think Okinawa and a couple foreign countries.
Are these mostly people that lived Northeast?
That used to live Northeast, yeah. And the people that have transplanted into other places are even more excited about the book because they don't live here anymore, and it's about their past.
Did you grow up in Northeast? Okay. What's your family background? Where did you live in Northeast?
I lived on 27th and California Street.
Okay.
And I moved there when I was about 6 years old, and we there was the little neighborhood stores that I was real shy when we first came here, and some of my first friends were the people that own the stores. So.
And you told me at one point you were going to do some short pieces on some of the neighborhood businesses, and that's kind of how you got started writing some stuff?
I had written just some little vignettes about Joe and Bessie and Steve Wasik, who were the neighborhood, kind of the mom and pop stores that were in the neighborhood, and you know, they'd give me free popsicles and things like that in the summer, and you know, just treated me like, you know, like I was one of their kids or something. That's nice. When I'd go in there, and I had written about these people, and some of the people from my writers group said, "Oh, you've got to write more about Joe and Bessie, and about Steve Wasik," and that's how it kind of all began.
And it just snowballed from there. How long did it take you to write this and research it?
It took about 5 years.
Wow, that's a labor of love.
Yeah. Well, there was some scary points because I had no idea what was on the other side. You know, I really thought it became a quest for myself. You know, I wanted to write this book for my own family and for my own information, and I didn't care if no one was going to read it. I was going to write it anyways.
So it was Genny, first of all.
Yeah.
You were your own audience.
I did quit my job, though, in 1993.
In the midst of this?
Yeah, because I thought, well, I'm going to write a book.
Well, good for you. No, your husband said, well, that's fine, just knock off from work.
Oh, yeah, he don't care.
He didn't care about that. Now, has he been surprised by the success of this?
Yeah. And it was fun for him, too, because he took some of my pictures for me, and I had a professional photographer take some of the pictures, and then also I got some from the Historical Society.
Yeah, there are a lot of wonderful historical
pictures. And they're
very,
they're more expensive. Well, he was using the one camera, and then my son broke the camera when he was in Europe, and so he took some of those pictures with one of those little cardboard throwaway cameras. And they turned out so nice.
Well, that's pretty good.
And he got recognition for these pictures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was all excited. It was the first time in my life, I think, where we really shared something together, and he was just as excited as I was.
Well, that's a nice family project then. That's really good. Your family was up on 27th in California. As you were writing this, did anything surprise you, things that you didn't know about other corners of the neighborhood, anything that came up and said, I had no idea?
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of those. You know, because when you're a kid, you're kind of just aware of your own little corner.
Yeah, the immediate vicinity.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I didn't even know that there was Italians in Northeast and other ethnic groups because there were so many Polish around by us.
And that was your milieu, the Polish.
Yeah, and there was a few Russian and Slovak with us, but when I was growing up, I thought the whole world was Polish.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure, because that was your world at the time. You know, as we're talking, I think we're going to bring up on the screen some addresses of businesses that existed over the last, say, 100 years along Central Avenue. And so I think some photos and some images of that, because Central Avenue also was a very important street, a commercial street in the development of Northeast, as were others like Johnson and Stinson and things like that. So you have had success with the book, and when you and I talked earlier, you said that there were a handful of things that you thought maybe made the book really successful. The first thing you said was sort of the name dropping, all of the people that the readers could get into. What did you mean by that in terms of name dropping?
Well, one lady I remember that worked at the library said that they used my book at their family reunion. And I said, oh, you know, and then she said, she was mentioning all these names of people that they knew. And I didn't plan to really name drop. It just, you know, if it just came up with some of the information that there were names were part of the history.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that people would be so excited to have somebody that they knew or some of their relatives in the book. And I mean, certainly I can understand it now. I mean, if my family was in a book, I'd buy it.
Sure.
You know?
Sure, even if it's just
and
a name
show it around.
That guy.
And then people would say, they'd bring up something from the book, which, you know, sometimes I didn't even remember, and I'd say, well, are you sure that's in there? And
says the author.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes they were bringing in some of their own memories and mixing them with different things. And then also I interviewed different people, so these people that I interviewed would bring up names too.
Yeah.
So I didn't always know if someone said, oh yeah, such and such in the book. I didn't always know if it really was or not, because there was a lot of information in that book.
Well, and you mentioned the pictures. That's something that people can really connect
Oh,
with.
yeah.
You know,
yeah.
every picture is so evocative. People go, oh my word, I remember that store or that neighborhood or whatever.
There was a couple pictures that I remember. One was Blackie's Bakery.
Oh, sure.
And it was the horse and the wagon delivering the baker, you know, the bread. And I wanted that picture, and I hounded them.
Yeah. Oh, from the actual
from the
bakery itself.
Yeah. The guy.
And they're an institution in Northeast.
Yeah. And you know, I didn't give up on these people until they gave me these pictures.
So you were hounding these poor folks.
Yeah.
You said one fellow even had kind of an emotional response at one point. One guy was actually so connected to what he read. You said he raised a few tears and.
Oh, so many people called me and said, you just made my grandmother's Christmas, or you made my dad cry. And one lady even said to me, thank you for helping me to get to know my mother. I never knew my mother before. There were certain things about traditions and about the culture that she didn't understand until after she read my book. And it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
But it was an emotional thing for a lot of people.
You bet. We've got just a couple moments to go here, but I know you're working on another book. Now, would it be fair to call that a sequel? I mean, it's coming from what you've done?
It's a continuation of the first book.
Yeah,
so.
And why? I mean, you just get so many phone calls saying, hey, you missed...
Yeah, they'd say, well, you didn't get my church in there, or, you know, you missed such and such. And, you know, at first, there's no way you can get everything.
Yeah.
But then after I started hearing more and more things, I thought, well, gee, that's enough to make another book.
You bet. Yeah, and you have a working title? Or maybe more than one?
Yes, yeah. Well, we're thinking of calling it Pride and Tradition. No.
And those are true elements, true qualities of, I think, the spirit of Northeast Minneapolis. Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to think of what picture would go with Pride and Tradition. See, the picture of the Genny Pickle factory has several meanings to me. On the other book, my mother worked at Genny Pickle.
Oh, okay.
You know, and back around the same time period of what that picture was taken. She's not in the picture, but because of the title, Heart and Hard Work, my publisher wanted something that went with that title. So now
that was a place where people worked, and of course there's a family connection.
It's very much a connection, yeah.
Okay, and we should just mention quickly the name of your publisher.
Noden Press.
That's right. And at the end of this show, people have an opportunity to get some information about how to call a number and stuff like that. Well, Genny Zak Kieley, I want to thank you very much for just giving us a little outline about your book.
Well, thank you.
Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, that was a wonderful interview, and the crew actually counted how many times between us we said, yeah. It was in the 60s. But it was a great time. We learned a lot from Genny. We also met a lot of other wonderful people over the last year and a half. Let's take a short look at a montage of some of our favorite spots just out and about.
Song of Hiawatha by Henry Longfellow. By the shore of Gitchigumi, by the shining Big Sea water, at the doorway of his wigwam, in the pleasant summer morning, Hiawatha stood and waited. All the air was full of freshness, all the earth was bright and joyous. And before him, through the sunshine, westward toward the neighboring forest, passed in golden swarms the past the bees, the honeymakers, burning, singing in the sunshine.
I've driven a 21A about 2 years now. I've driven most of the other routes, though, your 2, your 3, your 4, your 17, your 12. I even drove the 6 for a while. This 21A is a good route, though. There ain't a day that goes by I don't say, shoot, I never seen that before. Well, it's a different kind of people, see? Poor, sometimes I bet there ain't $2 on that whole bus. Weary, some of them people have been through stuff a cat wouldn't live through. Crazy, there's no way. They're just as sane as you or me. Little odd, most of them. I don't know how they keep from cracking up.
Well, what about you?
Me? Well, I go up north fishing with my brother-in-law. That would be Ray. Oh, cripes, we catch the fish. Last year we limited out on northern and walleye both, and the beauty of that country, shoot. We're sitting there casting by the shore. I seen these 4 deer come down for a drink. I says, looky there, Ray, I'd give $100 for my deer rifle right now. See, we got another 3 months before deer season, so I just threw a rock. Hey, you should meet this guy, Ray, though. He runs a chicken farm with my sister and 2 kids. That would be Joe and Bill. But these chickens, you don't eat them, see? Ray teaches them how to play tic-tac-toe and then sells them to fairs. He makes good money, and they are good, boy. Shoot. I tried all day, never could beat this one.
We watched him tear the house down on Ulysses Street with the bulldozer. Knock it down. And I thought my oldest daughter was going to cry, and instead it was the youngest daughter. But they took pictures of me holding the hose to keep the dust down. And I hope I get the neighbors will tell me when the bulldozers come in here. I don't think I'll ever be moved again.
Yeah.
But when the freeway took the property on Ulysses Street, I didn't think I'd ever be moved again because 94 was going in east of us. I didn't think some crazy thing like Humboldt Greenway was going through. And I thought we were safe on a little dead-end street, nice and quiet except for the trains. I had first heard about it. We went to a meeting in Brooklyn Center, and they told about it and divided us into small groups to try to get us to go along with it. The Brooklyn Center dropped the idea, and Minneapolis picked it up. They want to beautify North Minneapolis to make it look like Memorial Drive. I think I knew I was going to have to move from the start.
I'm Elizabeth Haugen, and we are inside Minneapolis. We're here on Franklin Avenue to speak with some of its residents, business people, and artists, and find out what draws them here. What do they like about Franklin Avenue? Let's go inside Seward Tower East and talk with Midge and Myrtle.
It's very easy to get around, and we have this beautiful river, trees, and the river road now, I understand, is completed clear out beyond Northeast Minneapolis. And I just found that out, so I took that the other day, and it's gorgeous. And I love the trees. I live on the south side, so I can overlook South Minneapolis. The people on the north side overlook the river. And both of them are wonderful and entirely different, really, because they get downtown and I get all the trees over here. It looks like a green velvet carpet when I look out there in the summertime.
That last clip featured Elizabeth Haugen talking with people along Franklin Avenue, and she was one of the great assistants we had, along with Lisa Volkman and Sherry Nolan on our side of the camera. And I want to say a special thanks to John Harrison and his folks for helping us with everything, creating all the magic behind the cameras. Well, for our next segment, it was talking with Theresa Carr from the American Indian Business Development Corporation about some of the changes that they were taking place along Franklin Avenue this summer. Stay tuned. Well, sitting with me now is a woman who has a lot to tell us about some of the economic development and property management in Franklin Avenue. Theresa Carr.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
And Theresa is the executive director of the American Indian Business Development Corporation.
Very good.
Which, by the way, happy birthday, 25 years.
25 years
this year.
In April.
Yeah.
We're really proud of that.
Anything that lasts, I think, more than about 7 or 8 years, you got to say, that's for real.
Yes,
that's
right.
Good.
We have survived and grown, and we've got an exciting year ahead of us, which I'm going to tell you about.
Absolutely. Oh, some visual things, some bricks and mortar things, a lot of programs. But let's back up half a step. For folks who don't know the history, how did AIBDC start, and what's kind of your mission?
We've got a really interesting history. AIBDC focuses on the Phillips neighborhood in Minneapolis, which is the largest neighborhood, both geographically and in terms of population. There are 18,000 people there. It's the poorest. It also has the largest urban American Indian population of anywhere in the country. I've heard that we may have slipped to 2, but we still have a very high American Indian population. And a group of 5 women in 1975, they were in their early 20s, early careers.
That's amazing right there.
It is, and they had a lot of energy and a lot of vision, and they saw the neighborhood deteriorating, and it was hurting American Indian people, and they thought, what can we do? And they didn't know the answer. But they started having a lot of meetings in the neighborhood and asked the neighborhood, how could the neighborhood be better? And people would say, well, we don't have a grocery store, and we don't have a place to buy prescription drugs or to get our car fixed. And so these women who had no commercial real estate background and not too much nonprofit background, decided they'd build a commercial shopping center.
Let's start big.
Yeah.
Let's do a shopping center, not just a storefront, but a shopping center.
Yeah, it took them 8 years, and they also knocked on the doors of something like 100 different foundations. Jim Shannon was president of the Minneapolis Foundation at the time. He gave AIBDC our first grant and got us going.
Yeah.
That transformed it from an all-volunteer effort to being able to hire a part-time executive director, Brenda St. Germain.
Yes.
And they built the Franklin Circle Shopping Center, and that is quite a story in and of itself. It includes finally getting the walls up and a tornado coming and blowing them out. And
an actual tornado?
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that.
And at one point, when they were digging up the ground, excavating it, they found the remains of a body, and they had to stop construction for murder investigation. And it was just, yeah, they lost funding at one point. So it was really a great story of perseverance.
Absolutely.
And they were able to attract national franchises, Walgreens, Crown Auto, Payless Shoe Store, got Country Club Market. Which
I think I've shopped at all of those, that's right.
Yeah.
But also local businesses have come in there as well.
And local businesses. Yeah, there have been some turnover since then. But it really is an amazing story. Yeah. And it was completed in 1983.
Yep.
Takes up 2 blocks.
Yep. Well, you were nice enough to bring this forward. Why don't we at least just orient our viewers to where you're talking about? And then there have been a number of other significant projects that AIBDC have developed in terms of property. Why don't you just walk us through sort of historically?
Well, the Franklin Circle Shopping Center takes up 2 buildings, and it goes between 12th Avenue and 14th Avenue. In this particular drawing, those avenues are vacated, but that project was completed in 1983. Yep. And then in about, 10 years later, actually 1989, the Franklin Business Center opened.
Which is just over here.
Right, and that's a small business incubator. It's designed for light manufacturing and office tenants. The small business incubator philosophy is that you put a bunch of small business startups under one roof, and they have a greater chance of surviving because they have shared photocopy, fax machine.
Some services that way they don't have to duplicate each of them and have that overhead.
Technical assistance, all of that.
That's good. And I've heard some great success stories have come out of
Yeah, we've got some of our more famous tenants are Irish Books and Media, Banner Creations, Aurora Henna Shampoo Company. So our latest one is At Your Fingertips Office Supplies, owned by 2 American Indian women. And then our third project was the Phillips Community Office Center. That's at 1014 East Franklin. It's a small office building just for nonprofits.
I think I've been in there for neighborhood meetings over the years.
Right. Phillips Community Development Corporation is in there now, Somali Community of Minnesota. Our fourth project, Ancient Traders Market, just opened in
this
December.
Is very exciting, I have to tell you, Theresa. This is great.
Where Ken is. And also Maria's Cafe. Maria just opened a month ago, and she's already going to expand.
Wow, congratulations. And you were likening sort of the ambience of that space to where we're sitting here.
It's similar. The Ancient Traders Market is comprised of 5 buildings, actually, and the original building was built in about the 1880s, and that's the building we put Maria's in. So it has high ceilings, brick walls. It's very charming.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
And you've got something that is intriguing to me personally and professionally, just across the street there that's kind of coming online, another building you're setting your sights on?
Right. Across 11th Avenue, it's marked here as the City Store. It's 1035 East Franklin. We have a name for it yet. If anyone has a great idea for a name, let us know. We have a purchase agreement to buy that building and anticipate closing on it within the next 2 months. And it will be a building for artists on the main floor, artist studios and galleries, and then it will be office space upstairs. But we love that building also. Tin ceilings, doors with transoms, lots of hardwood.
Another classic building from the area.
Hardwood floors.
And you and I were sharing earlier, I have memories when I used to live in the neighborhood of that as a great hardware store in South Minneapolis.
A lot of people do. Arts Hardware.
Arts Hardware, and now it's going to be Art. Maybe that's part of the new name.
Hey.
Arts
Right here, you came up with it.
There we go. Okay. And so part of that would be open to the public. You mentioned galleries. I mean, so in other words,
Yes.
the studios
Some
will be
retail
there,
space
and
in
there'll
the
be
front.
retail for people coming in
Right.
and enjoy the art.
And it was very intentional to use this building for art because it's right next door to Franklin Artworks.
Yes.
It's misnamed here as Franklin Cultural
Right.
Center, but
Right.
they ended up naming it Franklin Artworks, which of course has a gallery and a lot of exciting things happening with artists.
And another great story of neighborhood perseverance
Absolutely.
to sort of reclaim that old theater.
Yes.
I've been in since the walls have been up on the art side there. Tim Peterson and his folks.
It's wonderful.
It's lovely already, that
Already.
part. And you get your arts
Yeah.
galleries or whatever
Yeah.
started there. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's just sort of the beginning now. That's sort of what historically has been in the works, and you're anticipating the one priority, but you're putting a whole bunch of money now into a couple of the sites here.
Yes, we are. We're doing 3 projects concurrently in 2000, so it's a big year for us, and we're also doing our 25th anniversary capital campaign, which is $2.7 million.
Word.
It's going to be a busy year. So we already told you about the Arts Building,
Yep.
as yet unnamed. The Franklin Avenue streetscape, which goes from 16th Avenue all the way down to Chicago Avenue, which is off this map, is a $4.5 million complete reconstruction of Franklin Avenue. They're narrowing, I'm saying, that's also the City of Minneapolis Public Works is the key partner in this project, and Hennepin County. Narrowing the street, widening the sidewalks to make it more pedestrian friendly, creating parking bump outs, adding lots
That
of
can kind of
landscaping.
slow traffic a little bit, as I understand
Slowing
it.
traffic,
Yeah.
right. Adding landscaping, greenery, high-level lighting, low-level lighting, public furniture, new waste receptacles, so beautifying it.
Very nice, yeah. And then you're tying that in with some improvements to the Franklin Circle Center.
Right, and I should say that this streetscape is really a project of the Franklin Avenue Business Association, who has contracted with AIBDC to be the neighborhood liaison and kind of shepherd the project into the neighborhood. So our role is lesser in that project. This project is our own project. We've redirected the entryway of Ancient Traders Market to the east. This used to be a long, dark wall. We opened it up with windows, which you saw in Ken's store probably.
Yes, that's right.
And we're vacating 12th Avenue and 14th Avenue and turning this into a public plaza. And the beauty of it is we're using all the same design elements that the neighborhood chose for the streetscape in the shopping center and the public plaza. So the same decorative tiles that you might be able to see here, they're laid at the diagonal and they have different ethnic symbols imprinted sporadically along
So a
the
nice
street.
sort of design integration there of the two projects.
Right. It'll have a continuous flow.
We're almost out of time, but I want to compliment you because it sounds like your project here will sort of embrace and connect with what's going on in the rest of the street, so a very welcoming atmosphere.
That's the goal.
That's very
That's
good.
the goal, and we hope to crown it off with public art.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sounds like another
the entrance.
conversation
It
we
does.
could have.
It does.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, we're just about out of time, but before we go, for folks who maybe haven't been down to Franklin Avenue in a while, they maybe used to live there, they had family who used to live there, and they've moved out. Any word of invitation to people? I mean, what's your feeling? What's your sense of what's going on in Franklin Avenue?
Please come down. There is so much happening on Franklin Avenue, and of course I just told you about AIBDC's projects. We're not the only ones, though. Catholic Charities just did a big project. There's a big project called Ventura Village. So the neighborhood has tremendous momentum right now, lots of creativity and ideas, and actual work happening.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, come have lunch at Maria's Cafe or
Sounds
shop
good.
at
Do a little shopping.
Ken's store.
Theresa Carr,
Yeah.
thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thanks
Pleasure
for
to have you
having
here.
me.
Well, we learned a lot talking with Theresa. In fact, although we taped that segment in March of 2000, the month that it's showing right now in September is the time you can go down to Franklin and see the fruition of some of those efforts. Well, now, every show, we had a little trademark. Sherry Nolan helped provide us with great photo montages to illustrate the topics we were covering in each segment. Let's take a look at one of our favorite photo montages over the last year and a half. Well, that was a nice illustration of part of the story we were trying to tell about the development of South Hennepin Avenue in Minneapolis, especially around the trolleys and how they were instrumental in making that part of Minneapolis grow and prosper. That was in September of 1999, and then earlier this year, we decided to tackle the topic of race and ethnicity. So we put together a panel of some lively and opinionated guests. Let's take a look at one segment from that hour-long show. That was in May of this year. Well, thanks, Barbara. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a wonderful facility, and I'm excited for the citizens of Minneapolis, as well as the students that get to study here. And I also want to give a thanks to Lisa Volkman. She's one of our assistant producers, who month in and month out arranges wonderful spaces for us to be in. So many thanks to her. Well, as we took a break, and we knew we were going to start talking about our next topic, which is code words, and I have to admit and just be blunt, I often think that code words are a way to stop conversation, and especially when it's an important conversation, I tend to resist that. So I thought with the help of my colleagues here, we talk a little bit about, no way can we cover many of them, but maybe a couple of code words. And just as we were coming back, Hector mentioned, let's just start out with the very term race. As a superficial, was that the phrase?
Yes, it's superficial in many ways. You know, one, race is about physical appearance, you know, and people make a judgment on another individual based on the dead skin that we have on the surface of our bodies. You know, it's a very superficial way of judging another human being. But also the construct of race, how it came about in the 18th century by a couple of European scientists who were specialists in classification systems. Also was a very superficially pseudoscientific way of determining the attributes of the different races. The first effort was valid in that there was a classification made according to the physical traits of individuals in a given geographic region. So far, so good, but then came another European scientist soon afterwards and said, well, this race has these attributes. And obviously, true to human nature, he assigned the best attributes to his own race.
Funny
and
how
the
that
worst
works,
ones to everybody else. And ever since then, we've been dealing with a false concept. You know, the more we talk about it and the more we use it without being aware of its origins, the more it misleads us, because it's invalid to begin with.
Good point. You know? Good point. I know the very term culture. Sometimes I work in the arts. I know Sandy does. We're all familiar with the arts. People have sometimes says, "Oh, you're a cultural worker," and they tend to think, "Oh, when you say culture, do you mean a person's background, the culture they come from?" So that's another thing that happens here. Now, how about in your office? Do you deal with this as a code, whether it's in legal ways or political ways?
Definitely, and I think I would even take that a step further in talking about race, as that, you know, for American Indians, again, when the federal government decided that we had to have blood quantum levels in order to be considered American Indian, that brings in a whole nother, it was really an attempt by the federal government to commit cultural genocide, because the more times you enter into these divisions of race, I mean, like, what does being 32/87ths mean? You know, I'm not sure how you get to be fractionated of a person. I've never understood for sure what 3/8 American Indian is.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, by taking away, you know, some right now in the city of Minneapolis, or in the Indian community, our community, we have people who are really full blood, but only one of their ethnicities counts, because they may be Lakota and Anishinaabe, and only one side counts, but yet they have more blood quantum than a person who's half. And so I think that was another way that the federal government used race against American Indians, because really we could all, you know, look typically Indian eventually and have no blood quantum, and so we would no longer be American Indian. So I see that's the way that race has really affected us in our community.
Interesting. I remember when Tiger Woods went pro, the media got into kind of a frenzy. Oh, we've got an African American. Oh, but wait a minute, he has other backgrounds, and they started amalgamating all of these things. And I thought he did a pretty good job. It seemed to back off. I am who I am. That was interesting.
I like playing with people a little bit too. When they say, "What are you?" I say, "What do you think I am?" And oftentimes I say I'm Swedish. I'm not, but just to throw them off a little bit, because and it depends on who's asking and how they're asking that question. You know, it can be very offensive. It can be because they're trying to place me in a context. So I think Tiger Woods is right on in saying, you know, he is who he is.
Yeah.
And that's a mixture of cultures, beliefs, traditions, which is...
And a pretty darn good golfer.
And a darn good golfer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, he can swing.
That's true. How about some other code words that we encounter? And pick up on anything you want. I know diversity is often bandied about. The whole concept of inner city is usually used as a code, which in my experience generally means poor folks, sometimes minority folks.
Sometimes criminal folks.
Well, that's a good point, yeah. I have acquaintances out in the suburbs who don't like to come into the inner city because not so much the color of people's skin, but they're afraid of what they're going to encounter in terms of crime and things.
The diversity one, shoot, we'd be here all day. Just really, it just works my nerves because, again, it gets back to that intent issue. You know, we're committed to diversity, but often folks are not committed to that diversity beyond the celebratory part of diversity. As long as, you know, we can celebrate and we can all come together and, you know, enjoy the gifts that each of our cultures bring, but beyond that, you know, there's no real commitment.
That's like a beginning
to
point.
that. It's a beginning. That's fine, but too often folks get stuck there.
Yeah.
You know,
well, there's Black History Month,
right.
Cinco de Mayo. I have friends that are Irish whom I've tried to book for performance or entertainment events, but they're not available in the month that we all think of with St. Patrick's Day, and they're just dying for something else. And I've worked with African Americans who said, well, thank you, I don't want to get pigeonholed in 1 month of the year.
But it's the 1 month thing. I definitely agree with you, but if you're going to embrace, and we talk about embracing diversity, well then that means you embrace me beyond my ability to fry some chicken. You know, you embrace my experience, you embrace my passion, and then, so we're talking about, you know, code words, but also that labeling piece is there. Yeah. That don't mistake my passion for being abusive. You know, instead of seeing it as passionate as you're abusive or you're, you know, we get labeled with all of these other things based on our ethnic, you're angry, you know. No, I'm passionate and I'm committed, and, you know, and so again, if you're going to invite me to the party, you can't do this selective valuing of me. This is a total package. You know, I don't come in chicken parts, you know, this is a total package. And so that diversity thing, I think we need to really kind of start breaking that down and just not take for granted that, you know, we're embracing diversity, so we're embracing the goodness and the richness that each of us bring based on our experiences.
Well, and Robin, you and I talked briefly once about this whole notion of tolerance, too. And when you have a sense of urgency, tolerance takes a different cast in one's mind.
That's another thing. Y'all, tolerate me? What is this tolerance thing about? You know, not to be tolerated. If you're talking about embrace me. But the tolerance, yeah, that tolerance thing is interesting. We'll be here all day conversation.
Well, it gets back to how we have conversations and when we're comfortable with it. I think you said something at one of the intent dialogues too, that we can spend a lot of time using those same old code words and not getting anywhere. So let's maybe get down to a more personal level about things.
We've got to get to the heart of the matter, because it is really a spirit thing when we're talking about all this, you know, challenging issue. We're talking about the abuses on spirits, and spirit is a deep thing, so let's just take it deep.
I always think of us as being beyond the foods and fiestas.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's not about, like you said, it's not about the fried chicken. It's not about I'll come out and do a powwow performance for you you know, Indian Month or whatever. You know, it's about who I am as a whole person, and you know, I'm a lot more than just, you know, yeah, sure I dance with powers, that's fine, you know, but that doesn't make me who I am. It's part of who I am, you know, and a large part of who I am. But I'm also a lot of other things that nobody ever digs deep enough to find out if that's all they ever want to. You know, they want to bring me out and put my garb on, my regalia on, and, you know, run me around the ring.
Well, we get into things about costumes, too. I've had guests on the show and somebody, oh, wasn't that a neat costume? Well, the point is, to the person wearing it, wasn't a costume.
No.
That's what they wear.
Clowns wear costumes.
Yes, I've been there. I've been there myself. That's right.
You know, one of the reasons why this issue of the need to go in greater depth into an awareness of what is involved in embracing diversity is because there's a great deal of frustration, both on the part of the majority community and the minority communities, as to why there hasn't been more progress made since the 60s. And part of it, I think, is that we thought we were going to patch this up, you know, a centuries-old problem with a few laws and welcoming people to do a festivity and enjoy their food. Well, you can't do that. You know, if you're truly trying to resolve a problem that has lasted for centuries, you have to go into it in depth.
And in an ongoing way.
Right, and you have to deal with individuals as human beings, not as objects, not as people that are quantified by the content of their
And you can't
their
negate
blood
your
or-
realities. You know, I can't negate your reality is your reality.
Right.
Well, tell you what, speaking of reality, let's take a quick break right here. We'll come back and let's talk about the reality today here in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. Get some subjective opinions, anyhow.
Truth in Minnesota.
Maybe a little bit, anyhow. But first, let's go back out on the streets of Minneapolis and hear from some citizens about what they think we're facing right here and now. Stay tuned. Nice discussion with those folks. Someday I hope to put that back together and talk about it in the future. It's an important topic. Well, a regular feature on Inside Minneapolis is what we call Did You Know? And usually the crew puts together an interesting question. We get an illustration of some person, place, or a thing in Minneapolis. And then, of course, you learn something about it. For this special edition, the crew really suggested we do a piece about me. Wasn't my idea, but here's a little Did You Know about yours truly. Well, anybody that lives in or visits Minneapolis knows and probably adores our park system. The next segment was actually part of a full hour-long show that was viewer-generated. Yes, one of our viewers saw us do an earlier show, liked it so much that she called with an idea about doing a show with the grandson of Theodore Wirth. So earlier this year, June of 2000, we were able to sit in the superintendent's building in South Minneapolis and talk with Ted Wirth. This is a great interview. Here's a little clip from it. Okay, hold on just a second. And we're back. Now, thanks to Mary Merrill Anderson and the folks at the Park Board, they were very helpful in putting this show together. And you might have noticed over her shoulder, of course, is the house in which we're sitting, Ted and I, right now. And that house is here very much on purpose. It was one of the conditions that your grandfather set to coming here. What was that? What else did he want?
When he was in Elizabeth Park in I forgot the name.
Oh, in Hartford.
Hartford,
Yeah.
yeah. I would keep wanting to say New Bedford or something, or Hartford. The superintendent was provided a beautiful home, big white square mansion, and so he said, well, he would come to Minneapolis if they'd build him a house in a park in Minneapolis, which Loring agreed to. Yeah. And he said also he wanted a car and a chauffeur because Grandpa never did learn to drive. Yeah. Even when he, up to his retirement, he still either had a chauffeur or his wife drive him.
That's a good gig.
Yeah, I can't imagine getting the city to give a superintendent a house even.
Not these days. I think times have changed.
Yes.
Now, I know he had, at least for a while, an office at City Hall.
Oh yeah, he had his one office at City Hall.
Okay.
But most of the work was done here in the basement of this house.
Yeah, kind of his studio, his workshop is the area that he worked
well,
on.
he had, I think, 4 or 5 landscape architects or engineers down the basement.
Just kept them there, right?
Well, yeah, if you look at the house from the backside, there's a row of windows.
Yeah.
And he had his office there.
Okay.
And what he would do is in the morning he'd get up and have his coffee and breakfast. Then he'd go down there to the office and he would get with his people and line up the work for the day, whatever design they were working on. Then the chauffeur would pick him up at the back side door because this road used to go all the way through.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't,
went around the house?
Yeah, there wasn't a turnaround on those days. And so the chauffeur would take him down to the barns, then to either visit some of the projects or just visit the parks, end up at City Hall. In the middle of the afternoon, he'd come home and check and see if they got the work done.
Well, he was the superintendent.
Yeah.
He was in charge.
Yeah.
That's right. A moment ago, we took a look at a contemporary look at the Rose Garden here in Minneapolis. Let's talk a little bit about the notion, the idea of a public rose garden. What was the inspiration for that, or what does that mean to a city to have something like that?
Well, I would guess this inspiration from my grandfather's perspective was people.
Yeah.
Because he's always believed that, and it's in this goes back to this Cleveland dialogue, that people are what parks are all about. He said the thing that wasn't recognized by most people is the common entity of their work was people, that they observed the people and designed and planned the parks in relationship to whatever typical market there was, we would say. And that's how they, and they'd go out and observe them, how they recreated, where they recreated, and where they wanted to walk and pass.
So kind of a scientific basis, really. They went out and observed how people
That's
actually
right.
used. It wasn't all in the head. They actually went and saw what people did.
And they got great pleasure out of watching the people use them after they were built. And I can relate to that because when I do it in my practice, I go out afterwards and the project's built and the people using the project don't know I did it.
Yeah.
But I know that I created something that was working for the people.
Is that one way you measure sort of the success of some of this land use and land planning, is to see how people actually make use of it?
Oh yeah, that's a very big part of it.
Sure.
And it also pointed out that, as pointed out in Cleveland's book, people in parks are the whole reason for parks.
Yeah.
And that the people in the parks vote the money for parks, so therefore, a roundabout way, it's doing a market study.
That's a good point too, sure.
You know.
And there's kind of a dual challenge too, to preserve the wonderful system, but then to make sure it gets used.
Yeah, well that was, if you go back to the 1916, to the Organic Act establishing the National Park Service.
Okay.
Which in a way had preceded a lot of state parks and county parks. But it specifically says that the national park areas will be set aside for the enjoyment and use of the people.
Now, does this go back to another Theodore? Is this Theodore Roosevelt?
No.
Was some of that national park?
You know, Theodore Roosevelt was just before this.
Okay.
General Grant, wasn't it?
Ulysses?
No, that was the Yellowstone National Park.
Okay.
1870.
Yeah.
But they've developed the National Park Service, and it specifically had that contradiction: preserve and protect, but use.
Yeah.
And the Park Service and cities and communities and counties and other agencies all over the country now use that same idea.
Sure.
You hear about all about environmental studies. That's where you evaluate and analyze the resource itself. And you don't want to plant it and not use the very thing that makes it worthwhile to set aside as a park to begin with.
Yeah, otherwise it's just a little showcase and
That's
nobody
right.
would use it
Yeah.
otherwise. Well, you made a very good point that Minneapolis at the time, it's easy to sit here now at the turn of the century and think, well, what a beautiful system and the city's grown up all around it. But it wasn't always so. No. Was Minneapolis unusual in being a city sort of this far removed from everything that had been built up on the East Coast, or were other cities as far west at the time doing things like this?
Well, it was unique because it was one of the first.
Is that right?
Yeah, there was Kansas City and a few other metropolitan areas were also influenced by this book.
Okay.
And by the people in the profession that were beginning to evolve.
Right.
The American Society of Landscape Architects was founded in 1900. So the whole thing was sort of the industrialization,
Yeah.
you might almost say a young nation on its march to its destiny. It was going to develop this land to the west, these great open areas and wooded areas.
And a few cities had the prescience to think about that
Yeah.
close to the beginning. I mean, they didn't wait 2 or 3 generations. They really got started as soon as they could.
Minneapolis is a good example, too, because if you read my grandfather's book and the history, there were a lot of people that were against the parks and setting aside any land for parks. I call it those valiant few who outshouted the others or somehow, but they made Loring and Barry happened to get a foot in the door and get the master plan done, and you know, it just took off from there because people all of a sudden, as it did become more industrialized, saw the need for parks.
You mentioned the book your grandfather wrote. Am I correct in what I've heard that that was written right in this house?
Yeah, he retired in 1935, and then he was made superintendent emeritus to write the book.
All right.
So I think that was all of about, all up through the war. It's about 10 or 15 years at least.
Sure.
Writing the book and gathering all the data.
And I've actually been stopped by someone who knows about our show, stopped down at the Minneapolis Public Library, and he went on rhapsodically about having a copy of that book. I mean, this is now something that people prize as a piece of our history here in Minneapolis.
I have the original manuscript.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And there's a park now in Minneapolis named after your grandfather, Wirth Park.
Yeah, it was Lindale, not Lindale.
Oh, Glenwood?
Glenwood Park.
That was the old Glenwood.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was named for my grandfather, Theodore Wirth Park, and that has the golf courses, and they used to have the Aquatennial ceremony down on the lake.
Yeah.
And they got par 3 golf courses and par 18-hole standard.
We're going to get some images of that up on our screen as
I
we're
played
talking.
played them both, and it's a good course.
Oh, you've done it, all right.
And they used to have ski jumps.
I've seen pictures, yes.
Yeah, but they finally took them down because people were, I think, running toboggans or these boards.
Well, it is a winter climate. People want to
go kill somebody coming off. Anyhow.
Sure.
But
and
it's
I think we have an image later of somebody actually on one of those ski jumps.
Yeah.
And the chalet, there's a neat little story about the chalet.
Well, it was, again, grandfather's Swiss influence.
Yeah.
Because he was from Switzerland, and they wanted to build a chalet out there.
And it was reminiscent of
the Swiss chalet.
Yeah.
And that's for the golf and the winter sport. We were out there this last January, and Grandpa would be very, very pleased because there were hundreds of people skating and sledding. And
there's that great hill there.
Yeah.
To slide down in the winter.
That's what the first tee, first green.
You probably know better than I am
Yeah.
how to golf. Ted, let's take another break and come back and talk specifically about the Minneapolis system, some of the highlights here, and I know you've done some work here in our system as well. So let's talk about that in a moment. But first, folks, let's go out and take a look at a wonderful montage that Sherry Nolan put together of Well, for that, as I mentioned before we saw it, we really owe thanks to a viewer, Joan Berthum. She pulled that together, and she's maintained the contact with Ted Wirth, and I hope you, the viewers, as well as those of us that worked in the show, learned a bunch from Ted. Well, another feature, the other big regular feature we do in the show is, what the heck is that? And we've been all around town taking pictures of things and then asking people, what the heck is that? Something you might drive by all the time, or you've seen over the years, but you just don't know what the heck it is. Well, our crack crew would go out and get the right answers. And this one, it's sort of a personal prerogative. Since the first show we ever did, I've always wanted to know, what the heck is this? Here's a picture of it, and then we'll get some, well, you bet, wrong answers.
Got some vinegar in it.
Oh, very cool.
This is bread.
That's good.
It's not something really gross, is it? No.
I have no idea. I have no idea. Are you going to tell us?
It don't look very appetizing. Oh, I'm not going to eat that.
Oh, it looks like oatmeal.
Okay, let's see. And then I gotta eat it, huh?
What is it?
What is it? It tastes better than it looks.
Mustard.
It tastes lemon and garlic. It seems like a chickpea, but maybe it's soy.
It's very good. I have no idea what it is.
My name is Gus Parkas. I'm the owner of Christos Greek Restaurant on Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis. The dish that we are looking at here is melinzano salata. Again, melinzano salata. It's an eggplant dish, which is very popular, of course, in Greece and all of the Middle East. Its ingredients are roasted eggplant, extra virgin olive oil, garlic, and lemon. Okay. It's a simpler version than the Middle Eastern one, which includes often other things like mayonnaise or once in a while tahini, which is sesame seed paste. This is just pure. It's a very popular item and very, very healthy.
Well, and that last shot was most of the crew and a couple of guests actually up on the stage at the Acadia Cafe along East Street. Well, that's it for now. I'm Phill Lindsay. Hope you've enjoyed Inside Minneapolis. So long.